Hey everybody, I decided today to kind of go back old school, so I'm just using my iPhone, and I'm going to do something simple because it's really hot and I don't feel like getting out there and shooting B-roll today. So this is going to be a kind of tech cosplay day, and let me show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so I did a video a while back about how I redesigned all of that, and my hard drive died. I gotta get it anyway, my external hard drive died, and as I was processing that video, and so I lost it. So till I can get that back, I'm gonna go and talk about how I built it, because really it's not so much what I did was so amazing or interesting or whatever, helpful. But I've heard from a lot of people about being nervous of soldering and how to do it, and they wish they could and all that. And it really isn't that complicated. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you guys how to solder a good solid joint that'll last, and explain a little bit how to wire things up, because it's really not that difficult. Okay, so the first thing you need to understand is there are two types of current. There is AC and DC. AC is what's in your walls, it's alternating current, and DC is what comes from batteries. That's what we're going to make use of. So this fan here is one that I've used in mine, and it's got a little connector. I don't care about the connector, but I care about the fan. And if you look on the back, it'll say it is a 5 volt and 15 amp fan. So it's one of those squirrel cage fans. So the first thing you need to understand is voltage. Something that's 5 volts, like this fan, if you feed it less than 5 volts, it's going to work, it's just going to run a lot slower. If you feed it AC, it's going to probably fry. Voltage is what we're interested in. Amps is how much power, is the quantity of power it's pulling. And these are, yeah, they'll be fine. I can't even believe that's 15 amps. That could be 1.5, and I can't read it. Oh, sorry. It's 0.15, not 15 amps. 15 amps is huge. I thought something was off. Yeah, 0.15 amps, so next to nothing. That's funny. Yeah, always double check, and it helps when you can actually see clearly. So yeah. So you want to make sure you hook up DC to DC. Now here's the interesting thing. USB connectors, which is what I used in my helmet, USB puts out 5 volts. That's your key to making all this stuff work, is know what your power source is. So if your power source is going to be USB chargers, which is what I like to use, you're going to run 5 volts. Make sure everything is 5 volts or less. I have LEDs for the lights in my Death Trooper, and these are 3 to 6 volt LEDs. So around 5 volts to them, guess what? They work fine. They're going to be okay. Everything needs to kind of match. Okay. The next thing you need to understand is typical wiring colors, at least in the United States, is generally one or two things is going to happen. You're going to have red and black. Red is positive, black is negative. You people in the UK, I know you do it backwards. It's okay. One day you'll get it right. All right, so sometimes on house current, you'll find white is the hot. You just need to know which one's the power. But generally when you have two choices, red is going to be your hot, is going to be your positive. And really all you have to do with this stuff is just hook up positive to positive and negative to negative. That's it. It really is simple. Now, don't freak out about soldering. I'm going to teach you. So here we go. So let me just plug up my soldering iron first. Okay. If you get into doing this thing a lot, doing this kind of stuff a lot. While my soldering iron heats up, I want to teach you a few things. So, you'll notice, let's see if I can put it in a place that you can see it better. Okay, there you go. So you'll notice there is one pin that's longer and one pin that's shorter. The long pin's the positive, and that's the negative. LEDs require a resistor, and a resistor does just, I have contacts, and so sometimes I rub my eye way too much. Resistors, all they do is it's exactly what it does. It kind of resists the flow of the electricity. So what I did was I went on Amazon and I bought a set. Bought a set of resistors, and resistors have a color code, and that's how you read them. So when I'm pulling this resistor out of a pack, I can know, like this one here is a 1 million ohm. So resistance is in terms of ohms, 1 million ohm, and you can determine that just by reading the color code, okay? And if I went through and read the color code, it'd say 1 million, but that's how you can tell what you got. So the LED works by, you need to have resistance on it, and that allows the diode to activate. There. Yeah, interesting. iPhone focus points. All right, we're not going to really get into that right now. You can also buy on Amazon, you can buy LED sets that are pre-wired with the resistor in them. That makes life a lot easier. You don't have to. I have these, and I have all these different resistors. So I have everything from a 10 ohm up to that 1 million ohm. And I think for these, I'm trying to remember which ones I used. I think it was a 4.7K. I'll have to look through here and find out which one I used for my project. So the other thing I get is I pick up a breadboard. And this is just a little thing that you can pin stuff in. So you want to wire some stuff up, there's a positive and negative, boom, right there. And the way these things work is this positive and negative works for the accompanying row. And there's nothing to connect this side to this side, and this is the opposite row. So what you can do is you can take your LED and you can pin it in like that, and so you have the positive on one side and the negative on the other. You plug power up here, you plug your negative up here, back to your power source. Of course you need a resistor in here, but you can do all that in the breadboard and test your circuit. Once you know you've got the right resistor for this, then you can pull this all apart and you know how to solder it all together. These are useful and they're really cheap. You can get them on Amazon. I'll put links to this stuff below. The third thing I get to build my kits is, and I did this to build my helmet, is I just got a pack of wire, color-coded wire. Again, this wasn't much. And this is 24, when you see AWG, that's the gauge, that's the diameter of the wire. The thicker the wire, the more current it can handle. Thinner, but for stuff we do, 24 gauge is fine. It's very thin. It's hookup wire, and it's stranded. This is stranded, so you need to twist it. I don't like solid core, because what happens with solid core is as you're flexing it, it can bend and break real easy. Twisted wire, you have a lot more different, the wires are thinner, they flex more, they're a little more resilient. So that's what I get. And we're gonna pull some wire and strip it. Okay. Next thing I like to have is, I have one of these. It's a south wire. This is a stripper. And the way it works is you put the wire in the hole, and then you pull the handle, And what it does is this, let me see if I can get it on here. As you pull the handle, that back, the jaws come down, okay? You see that? Right there. Okay. I'm gonna try to get right in the camera. Okay, so the front jaws come down, and then that back grabs onto the cable. This one here is grabbing on the cable, and then see how it slides apart? So the front jaws grab one part of the sheath, the back jaws grab the cable. Instantly, you've got a great strip for your connection. Also, good set of wire cutters. I like these. Again, this is South Wire. I guess I use them a lot. I just like their stuff. But this one has strippers and all that. Sometimes these are just easier on a quick job if you're like outside working on something. All right. So the other thing I like to have is heat shrink tubing. And I don't know if any of this is going to be frontwards, backwards, or whatever. We'll see. I'll flip it around in post. But yeah, I like to have heat shrink tubing. That keeps any of the humidity, sweat, especially when building helmets, anything is sweat and all that, keeps it out of your helmet. Okay. Next thing you're gonna need is some solder. And I can't find my normal solder pack, so I've got this other one. I'll just pop it open here. Solder. And it's just, this is rosin core, which is great for hooking stuff up. There's a couple different types, but this for low voltage. And I like the little packs like this because you can just pull it out as you need it, and it gives you a good way to hold it. You don't need to, you can just hold it with your hands. You'll see, it's real easy. The other thing I like to have is what's called a third hand. You'll see why. All right, the other thing I like to have is what's called a third hand. This is a very useful device for a lot of things. You can use it if you tie flies or whatever. It just allows you to crimp your connections between here. It's got a lot of adjustments to it. So you can move it in a lot of different ways. I love this thing, and it just sits on your tabletop and works. Okay. Last thing, an old dirty sponge that's wet, and you'll see why. This is to clean off the soldering iron. All right. So, okay. So first things first, we need to get a couple pieces of wire. So I'm going to my wire box here, and I'm just going to pull off something that I haven't used a lot of. I'll get some yellow, and we're not going to use a whole bunch. And blue. Generally, if I'm going to hook up a couple different circuits, I'll have a set of colors for each circuit. So this one, I have 6 different colors. So effectively, I could do red, black, green, white, yellow, blue, and I'd have 3 different circuits. So I have remember, you have to have a positive and a negative. It has to make a complete circuit. So that's one of the good things about these hookup wire kits is you can mix and match the colors and have a bunch of different circuits. So I mean, theoretically, I could do like red, black, red, this, red, blah, 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 blah. But generally, you want to stick so when you're hooking things up, you know what's positive and what's negative all the time, and you don't want to have a lot of confusion. So back to the tutorial here. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to do this so you can see it. This is 24 gauge, and unfortunately, this thing goes down to 22, but I can cheat it a little bit. So you just stick your wire in the hole, and then there you go. Ooh, try to find a good spot where there you go. So now I've got a connection. Now I need more than that for this type of connection. I need more, so I'm gonna strip quite a bit. There you go. So So I've probably got here, you can see, it's a good 1.25 inches, which is going to be fine. So now I'm going to do my other side. And the great thing about this tool that I'm using is there's really not a lot of chance you're going to cut through the wire. Okay, so now I'm just twisting it. Remember, these are stranded, so I need them to be together. All right, let me check my soldering iron. Yep. Getting hot. All right, now, so to make this joint, I'm going to try to do this in a way that you can see it. Here, my light's not the best. Okay, so this is there is a type of connection that NASA uses to make sure that things stay put. And basically what it is they're going to twist these. I'm going to do it with the colors so you can see. The way they do it is they take a lot of wire, and they're going to twist around this part, okay? And it's almost like a modified fisherman's knot. They're going to keep twisting, but then they're going to come back on themselves in some way like this, and what they're trying to do is make sure that thing doesn't slip. I'm not doing that, but I'm also not doing something as simple as, and I'll show you why in a minute. Let me untwist this. The other way people try to twist wire for soldering is they'll just take these two things like this, and they'll just go boom. Okay, and go, oh, there, that's a good solid connection. Well, it's not really, because as you pull, it's easy. So what I do is I kind of take a little, I'm not going to Mars with this thing, is I keep them all in line, because also I don't want to have to bend it at the very end. I want this thing to lay flat. So what I'll do is I twist down this way with this one, and I twist this way with this one, and what you're noticing is, you'll see, now I've got a lot more places to have connections between the wires. Remember, this is going to be the bare wire over here, so I've got all these places for the electricity to flow, and you're pulling on it this way. Yeah, you could pull it out, but you're not when I get it soldered. It's all going to be nice and firm. But I've got a lot of connection points, and that's what I want. So even if this thing rattles a little bit, there's a lot of backup in connections. So it's not likely that my joint is going to fail prematurely. So now that I've got my wires, before I twist them together, I'm going to take a little bit of shrink tubing. And this is the really big stuff. Let me get the good stuff. Okay, so I get my shrink tubing. I had the too much. And I'm kind of going to measure it. I'm going to go, okay, well, I want it to sit on the wire a little bit. So stretch it out. And I see how long my wire is, and I add a little bit of extra. And then cut it to fit. And then just slip it over. Heat shrink tubing is way better, in my opinion, than electrical tape. So now that we've got it all set up, now we can go and start using the now we can start using this. So we're going to take this, and I'm just going to go ahead and move this off because we're not really worrying about it right now for this example. If I really worried about it, first I'm going to make my twist. So I have to go about halfway through. So I've got it about halfway between the two wires, okay? And then I'm going to take one over the top, and I'm just going to twist these together, going down and I'm going to twist it really tight, but I'm working my way down each side. And I'm not twisting the main wire, I'm only twisting the tail ends. And the reason for that is I want to keep this as straight as possible. Now, there's my connection, and look how it's nice and clean and straight. What you're trying to do is really make one wire out of two. And honestly, you could pretty much say you could do this without solder. Use solder. You're gonna want to use solder, and that's what we're talking about today, so that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so I got it, and I put it in my third hand. And now we're gonna talk about a type of solder joint you want to avoid. So I'm going to clean my so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tin this. Just put a little solder on this, and it's going to help connect it. Now, what you don't want to do when you're soldering is you don't want to touch the solder to the iron and then watch what happens. If I touch the solder to the iron, I'm going to try to do it this way, and think that I'm making a good joint because it just flows down. See how shiny it is? Well, it's hard to tell. That's called a cold solder. What's happening is the solder is actually it's like dipping your work in chocolate sauce, like the ice cream in chocolate sauce. It's just got a shell. It's not actually into the metal. What you want to do is use your soldering iron to heat the wire up, and then when it gets hot enough, the wire itself will melt the solder. And when you do that, then you've got a good solder joint. You can go back. It's going to heat up here. There you go. When you get done, always wipe off your iron. Now, you have a pretty decent solder joint. That is going to last a whole lot more. Now, I told you about the heat shrink tubing, so we'll just pretend we've already just had it off to the side. Once that cools down a little bit, you can put your heat shrink tubing over it. And there's a couple ways you can shrink this. I have done a lot with it, and what I find works best, especially because I'm not really worried. If I had a very expensive soldering iron, I wouldn't do it this way. But this is a cheap Walmart soldering iron. I just use the bottom of the soldering iron. Not the tip part, I just use the base. And it's hot, and it will shrink this stuff up. And if it gets a little dirty, I don't really care because I am not really concerned about this soldering iron. Again, if I had some digital soldering iron, I would not do it this way. But you know, you can also use a heat gun if you have one. You can use. I don't recommend using a lighter, because you can catch the wire on fire. This stuff will actually catch fire, and so and what you want to do is this is kind of a little bit bigger, but there you go. This is still a little loose. It'll tighten up once it dries or cools off. So now I have a solder joint that is protected, it's solid, and it'll last. And that is your cosplay skill for today. All right, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I know this isn't a vlog entry. I know my cosplay community, it's been a while. I'm still working on Chewbacca. I'm going to do another one about that this weekend, so you can see the progress of the feet. It's just, I missed my deadline, and I was a little disappointed, honestly. But got a lot still left to do. Anyway, I know the Death Troopers will appreciate this. Don't be scared to make your own harness. It's okay. If you don't have the skills, that's fine. You don't have to have all these fancy tools. I don't even need you don't have to have the wire strippers. You can do it with a knife. You just got to be a little more careful. This stuff you can actually just put in your teeth and you can strip it that way. Yeah, did that a lot. But anyway, so I hope it's helped you. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to build this channel. I appreciate every one of you. I know that like 80% of the people who see my videos aren't subscribers. Subscribe. It would be nice, you know? Help me build this up. So anyway, that's it for now. Peace.